So we have ourselves a bit of a interesting thing said by Red Guardian actor in Black Widow. This is what he had to say. Let's see what he had to say, rather. Covering this for Bound Again Comics. Taking I like how they worded this. Taking a page out of the ideological playbook of his Black Widow character, the communism loving Soviet super soldier, Red Guardian actor Dave Harbour recently shared his disbelief at the idea that there is anyone who could disagree with socialist ideology. Hilarious. Harbour offered his opinion on socialism during a recent interview with The Guardian. So this is what The Guardian, this is what he was telling staff writer Alexei Duggins. I'm guessing it's because he's promoting this film. And he says that much like his Red Guardian character, I don't know that there's anyone who could disagree with socialist ideology. Oh, man. He said, if you work at Starbucks and you make the coffee, then you should own it. What the fuck? Oh, so this guy's a full-blown communist. He said that? That's a full-blown communist. So I guess he wasn't. When he was playing Red Guardian, he because he's espousing the same dumb shit that the communists espouse. It's the idea that, okay, you work, therefore you should be owning the product, no matter if you had anything to do with the coffee being provided to you. You didn't pay for that, but for whatever reason, it's because you did some labor and you were paid for it, you should own it because of reasons. You're the one making the coffee, he said, however, the Stranger Things star was not above admitting the fact that the implementation of these things has led to some of the deepest fascism in our society. So people assume that communism means fascism to a certain degree. No, I'll express all of that with historical context there here in a little bit. He also said it's a terrible thing, he added, before going on to explain that his ideal form of socialism was not fascistic society. All of them say that, where people are punished for stepping out of ideological line, but rather one akin to a kindergarten type society where we share things. Oh, that's just so that's the only kind of socialism you want. Sorry the camera is busted. My bad about that. Sorry about that. But yeah, that's exactly what he wants. Why is that camera? Why is it off? All right, hey, let me fix that mid show. But yeah, it's one of those things where he's saying what, unfortunately, a lot of actual communists say as well. And in doing that, what they do is the end game, or rather the logical conclusion, as far as I'm concerned, is what you have historically got in the event that the communists get power. Okay? And what that generally is violence. It's, from an economic standpoint, you end up with famines, overages, shortages. That's what you have historically gotten when in the event that the actual socialists get into power, especially over bigger nations. I know there are going to be people who, what about the Scandinavian countries with fucking 3 million people in it? But on a serious note, this moronic idea that people should, just because you do labor for something means that you should own it, is nonsense. Because what it does is it completely skips over how, if you are providing a good or rather you're providing a service for people, which is generally what you're doing if you're working at Starbucks, for example, it's moronic that you should own what it is that you're doing unless you were the one that were providing the actual coffee. Only you weren't. You weren't the one providing the coffee. You got what you needed to make coffee and then serve it, but you didn't pay for the coffee itself. You didn't pay for the rent for the building that you're working out of. None of that is taken into consideration. They just see, well, I work, therefore I should own it. The person that's taking the risk in terms of hiring you as an employee, where you get your money regardless if the business is at a negative or a positive. If they make money or lose money, man, means nothing, because you're paid for your the service that you're providing, and providing said labor. So that's all you have to work about. So you've assumed no risk. It's a bad anti-economic, or rather an economically illiterate non-argument. But I do like the way that he like tries to word it in more of a way like, oh, well, I just want it so where people share. Yeah, that's what socialism is. And what it does is, it's like, who doesn't want to share, right? I mean, I obviously don't, but you get what I'm saying here. What they get to do is they present their ideology as if it's a positive thing. Right. So if you are indeed against it, you're basically taking food out of kids' mouths. You hate poor people, all that sort of moronic shit, because they get to try to position themselves in a way that their ideology is what it's not, instead of facing it for what the reality of the situation actually is and what it has historically been. The most violent, the most dangerous, the most communist, or rather the most like, again, from an economic standpoint, bad objectively. Economies in terms of these nation states have almost exclusively been socialistic, communistic. You can use those terms interchangeably because they used them interchangeably back when, you had all this sort of push for said communism and socialism by way of the state, be it from the Ferdinand Lassalle's of the world in France, or even in Nazi Germany, obviously, with the Hitlers of the world. And it's funny how he words it in a way that I can see where people come, it be more fascistic, or it comes or appears in a more fascistic form, because that's what socialism was. You see, a lot of the misconceptions about fascism has been something perpetuated by leftist academics, in which they have built I don't want to call it, it's not economic, it's more of a political scale. And they've placed communism on one side and fascism on the other. That's a completely economically illiterate, nonsensical position, and it's ahistorical, most importantly. When you consider the history of fascism, if you actually read the doctrine of fascism by way of Mussolini and Giovanni Gentile, and if you read that, if you read what they say about like socialism, it's not that they were anti-socialism in the fact that, okay, they were against what it attempted to do. No, they just felt like definitely the more Marxian form of socialism couldn't get the job done. What they were against, though, is individualism. In fact, it explicitly states that, where he says if the previous century, if you read the doctrine of fascism, don't take my word for anything, the previous century was about the individual, which was liberalism, actually classical liberalism, which is what modern libertarianism is. It was about the individual. He says fascism is about the collective, which is essentially what this man is talking about, and what all these communists and socialists talk about. It's an anti-individualistic philosophy. Fascism is just the fascists getting rid of the cute wording and shit like that, basically saying, okay, this is what it is that we want to do. Nothing outside of the state, everything within it. So they don't want to accept the fact that, well, they're like, their logical conclusion of what it is that they advocate is absolutely fascism. Mussolini was a Marxist. Mussolini, objectively speaking, was a former Marxist. He wasn't a classical liberal at any point. He was a Marxist. That's not my opinion. Excuse me. These are the facts. But he says, as opposed to this world where we're hunting and killing and destroying our own, for our own personal hoarding or own personal greed. I don't know if he is speaking out of like a projection. Maybe he's trying to place that on us. But I'm not, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. Please let me know if this guy has donated every bit of dollar, or rather, he only kept what he quote unquote needed and shared the rest of it, in terms of the money that he made filming Black Widow or anything else. Because from my knowledge, I haven't heard anything of him like doing something like that. Man, these communist socialists are fucking weasels. But he's a champagne socialist. He's the one, a part of the Hollywood elites, get paid millions of dollars and will live nowhere near you guys. He just wants to appeal to that crowd or what have you, because he certainly is. I'm a capitalist. I'm pretty, open with the fact that I'm in the business of privatization. You know what I mean? That's what it is that I advocate. It's the core backbone of what my positions are. But I do think it's hilarious to see these champagne socialists sit up here and present socialism as if, I just want kindergarten style, which you basically call the ideology childish, which is what I would, because it skips in how this stuff has to be more so implemented. Oh, champagne socialists going champagne socialists. But I will leave you with this. Do not allow these people to, I've done plenty of videos talking about the history of this stuff. You can go watch my video that I did, which has at some point, I guess, communists on Reddit got a hold of it. It's called, Yes, the Nazis Were Socialists. You can go watch that. And it's funny. You see a bunch of comments. Well, he doesn't cite his sources. None of them prove me wrong. None of them ever proved me wrong, because my shit, it's verifiable. You can go look it up. None of them ever proved me wrong. They got a hold of it. So it went around. So you'll see a bunch of comments of like leftists saying, it's funny how his sources, where the sources on in the description. He doesn't provide any any sources. Like, that's not proving me incorrect. It's not proving me wrong. Just because you didn't want to take 2 seconds to look up what it was that I was saying. Definitely with the historical references and the direct quotes that I was using by way of these historical figures. But I did one called it's called The History of, it's on YouTube, called Yes, the Nazis Were Socialists. That's the name of it. You can go check that out. There's also another one, I can't remember the name, where I actually read through the doctrine of fascism. And talk about some of these things that a lot of people, again, they just use fascism. I mean, people with R's next to their name that do things that I don't like. That's what fascism means to them. They don't actually understand what fascism is. And I break it down and I go through like the doctrine of fascism, which basically spells out what it is, because it comes from the actual framers, the Godfathers. And you can watch that as well. So go check it out. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.